Welcome to our morning devotion. Our reading today comes from Numbers chapter 16, where Moses has to face off with a rebellion, and we get a window into the character and the strength of his leadership. It says in verse 1 that Korah, and then verse 2 that an entourage of 250 Israelite men come to confront Moses and Aaron and complain to them about the fact that they don't have the same kind of privileges and authority in the tabernacle worship that the priests do. They're offended and upset that they can't bring offerings the way that the priests can. And so they come confronting him, and it says in verse 3 that they say to them, "You've gone too far. The whole community is holy," they cry out to Moses and Aaron. "Every one of them, and the Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" To which Moses responds by, in verse 4, it says that he heard this and he fell face down. It's this response by Moses that really represents the heart of his leadership. It's a perfect illustration for us of the kind of dependency on God and humility that Moses led with all throughout the wilderness season. I want to challenge you this morning. How do you lead in moments of difficulty and trial, when people are opposing you, when people are speaking ill of you, when people are challenging you? How do you respond when people come against you, or when you face trials or difficulties of any kind in your leadership? Do you fall back and depend on yourself? Do you get triggered into those fight or flight reactions where you're either attacking people, defending yourself, or out of insecurity, withdrawing and kind of abandoning your leadership position? What Moses does is he stands his ground, he depends on God, and he takes a place of humility. All throughout Moses' life, he demonstrated that pattern of dependence. We see it in Exodus 15, when the people were first rebelled against him, when the water that they found in the desert was bitter. They wanted to kill Moses and return back to Egypt. But Moses prayed. And then again in Exodus 17. And then again in Exodus 32, when the people of Israel worshiped the golden calf. And then again in Numbers 11, and then even in Numbers 12, when Moses' own sister Miriam rebels against him. He gets on his face and he cries out to God on her behalf. Where are you experiencing challenges or difficulties in your leadership, in your places of influence, in your family, with your friends, or in your workplace? Where's God inviting you to depend on him, to give you the resources that you need? Where are you being challenged to cry out to him for the wisdom and the gentleness, and the patience, and the strength that you need? Are you crying out to God on behalf of those you call to lead and influence? That's a powerful image we get from Moses. Secondly, we see his humility. Moses, after he prays, he stands up in humility, and he doesn't run away from the challenge, but he also doesn't turn around and confront the challenge with force. See, he could have rallied a little army of 350 people to have a little civil war, but instead, he stands in humility. He stands his ground, and he says, let's let God decide between us. And in the end of the chapter, we see Moses' leadership is vindicated. And that's because when we depend on God and we stand in humility, we have true spiritual authority. True spiritual authority is rooted in humility and God dependence. When we depend on ourselves, we're more likely to react out of a fight or flight reaction because we're more easily threatened. But when we depend on God, we're more able to respond to challenges with a posture of humility, and therefore a place of true spiritual authority. And we see that with Jesus. In Philippians chapter 2, Paul says this about Jesus. He says, "And being found in human appearance, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth." What I love about this example is that when we humble ourselves, we allow God to do the exalting. And in our leadership, when we are threatened, we're always going to be tempted more easily and triggered into a fight or flight reaction. But when you're depending on God, when your first reaction when you're challenged is to go to a place of prayer and to cry out to God for yourself and for those who are challenging you, you're going to be more able to lead at a posture of humility and allow God to exalt you and to exalt himself in those moments. God bless you. Have a good week.